Everyone knows that Adolf Hitler was a soldier, a politician, and latterly a dictator, but few realize that he was an official intelligence agent, and in fact his secret work was the reason he came into politics in the first place. Hitler's problem before World War I had been his drifting, aimless existence. Born in Braunau, Austria in 1889, Hitler was not academically gifted, achieving little of note during his formal schooling. Undoubtedly intelligent, he was nonetheless immature and was spoiled by his doting mother since the death of his bullying and violent father. He had a high opinion of himself and was a lazy daydreamer who believed he had the makings of a great artist. 2 rejections by the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts didn't dim this self-belief, though his reality was one of squandering the rest of his small inheritance from his parents until he became a homeless person in Vienna, living in men's shelters and eking out a miserable existence peddling his hand-painted postcards on the streets or working as a day laborer on building sites. The event that was the making of Hitler was World War I and his service in the German army. In the army he found a home, routine, discipline, and the extolling of conservative values that he held strongly. He somehow survived 4 bloody years of trench warfare, and not just survived but actually flourished in action, despite being wounded several times, and being decorated several times for genuine gallantry, including the Iron Cross First Class, a medal rarely awarded to NCOs. The problem for Hitler was the end of the war in 1918 and the fall of the German monarchy. In the army he was a somebody, a decorated junior NCO. Outside of the army he would just be one of millions of other poorly educated men with no real prospects, forgotten in peace and destined perhaps for a repeat of his pre-war life of poverty and aimlessness. So it is hardly surprising that Hitler tried to stay in the army for as long as he could. This would only be a temporary measure, as Germany was ordered by the Entente powers to reduce its army of several million men to just 100,000 strong, renaming the Imperial German Army the Reichsheer. Lance Corporal Hitler had been recovering in hospital at Pasewalk when Germany surrendered on the 11th of November 1918, following injury in a British gas attack. Discharged from hospital on the 19th of November, Hitler reported to Munich on the 21st for assignment to No. 7 Company, 1st Replacement Battalion, 2nd Infantry Regiment. From December 1918 to January 1919, Hitler's unit acted as guards at a prisoner of war camp at Traunstein. Back in Munich, Hitler waited at the regimental barracks for an assignment as Bavaria erupted into revolution and a People's State of Bavaria was announced. Politics had become extremely polarized between the left and the right, and Berlin sent in troops to remove the new communist government in Munich, which they successfully did by the 6th of May 1919. Hitler gave testimony before military courts against revolutionary soldiers, and his strong anti-communist views meant he was retained by the new Reichswehr when his regiment was disbanded in May 1919, gaining a job overseeing the demobilization of his regimental comrades, along with a small number of other officers and NCOs. The Reichswehr announced a policy of army surveillance of the German population to prevent any further outbreaks of revolutionary activities, and Lance Corporal Hitler would soon come to the attention of Captain Karl Mayer, an army staff officer appointed commanding officer of the 6th Battalion of the Munich Guard Regiment and head of the Education and Propaganda Department. His job was the gathering of intelligence on political groups and parties of both the left and right in Bavaria, and he would need reliable agents in order to do this. In early June 1919, Mayer asked Hitler to become an agent, which he duly agreed to do. Mayer's opinion of Hitler was quite interesting. He described Hitler as, quote, like a tired stray dog looking for a master, end quote, and someone, quote, ready to throw in his lot with anyone who would show him kindness, end quote. Hitler attended a short training course at Lechfeld between the 10th to the 19th of July, and then became one of 26 anti-Bolshevik instructors for the Bavarian military units. His position was officially intelligence agent, a full-time paid member of the Army's reconnaissance commando. Meyer assigned Hitler the task of checking out a new political organization that had emerged in Munich, the German Workers' Party, or DAP, a tiny right-wing group that had been founded in Munich on the 5th of January 1919 by railway toolmaker and blacksmith Anton Drexler. Drexler hadn't served in World War I due to ill health, but had joined the German Fatherland Party towards the end of the war, a right-wing group that had helped foster the idea of the stab-in-the-back myth, whereby many right-wingers believed the German army had not been militarily defeated by the Entente powers in 1918, but rather undermined and forced to surrender by a cabal of mostly Jewish politicians and business leaders in Berlin, a group subsequently labeled the November Criminals, an idea that was to become one of the central tenets of Nazism. Drexler's friendship with journalist Karl Harrer, who was also a member of the Thule Society, a German occultist and ethno-nationalist movement, led to Drexler and some others forming a discussion club called the Political Workers' Circle in 1918. Drexler and Harrer then founded the German Workers' Party in January 1919. Some of the other founding members were Dietrich Eckart, an anti-Semitic poet and playwright and Thule Society member, a man who would become a mentor to Hitler and an early Nazi philosopher, and Gottfried Weder, a civil engineer and self-taught economist. Drexler was chairman of the DAP, but it remained an extremely fringe organization, its meetings at various beer halls throughout Munich attended by less than 40 people. Hitler, in civilian clothes, began attending some of the DAP's meetings. His job was to listen to the discussions and speeches and write up reports for Captain Meyer. The DAP espoused beliefs that Hitler tended to agree with: anti-Semitism, rampant nationalism, anti-capitalism, but also anti-communism. Hitler stepped over the line from being a passive and covert observer of the DAP to a participant at the Stenecker Bräu Beer Hall on the evening of the 12th of September 1919. Listening to a visiting speaker named Professor Baumann attack some of the DAP's core beliefs, Hitler lost his rag and spoke up. In fact, he launched a very impressive verbal tirade that totally destroyed Baumann's position. Afterwards, Drexler asked Hitler to join the party. Agent Hitler duly reported the offer to join to Meyer, who instructed him to indeed join the DAP. Hitler wanted to join because he could see that he was the most impressive speaker amongst this odd collection of men, and intended to take over the leadership of the DAP and use it as a platform to become a serious politician. A week later, Hitler turned up at the Rosenbad Beer House in Munich to be inducted into the DAP. At the same time, he remained a spy for the army on a salary of 20 gold marks per week. He was the DAP's 55th member. On the 16th of October 1919, Hitler gave his first political speech as a DAP member at the Hofbräukeller, wowing the audience. At subsequent speeches, his following grew and grew, and the DAP's membership swelled. By early 1920, Hitler was the party propaganda chief. On the 24th of February 1920, Agent Hitler spoke before 2,000 people at the Hofbräuhaus Beer Hall in Munich. The same day, the party's name was changed to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the NSDAP, known colloquially as the Nazis, to appeal to a wider audience space. The socialist element in the title coming from DAP member Rudolf Jung. Hitler had wanted to call the organization the Social Revolutionary Party. Captain Meyer had described Hitler, if you remember, as like a tired stray dog looking for a master. But it seemed that Hitler now had no use for the army. He had now found a new home: politics. On the 8th of July 1920, Captain Meyer was himself forced to resign from the army due to his involvement in a coup attempt against the government. Free of his controller and no longer needing the army as a home, Hitler left the Reichswehr to devote himself fully to politics, taking the leadership of the Nazi Party from Drexler in autumn 1921. As for his old handler, Meyer joined the Social Democratic Party and was a defender of parliamentary democracy in the lead-up to Hitler coming to power in 1933, after which Meyer fled to Paris. Hitler gave orders in 1940 for Meyer to be found. Arrested by the Gestapo, the man who had involuntarily created Hitler the politician died in February 1945 at Buchenwald concentration camp. As for Anton Drexler, the founder of the DAP, whom Agent Hitler had usurped as leader, he became a marginal figure in Nazi Germany. In 1934, he received the Blood Order, the party's most exclusive medal, but slipped into alcoholism, dying in February 1942. In fact, of the early DAP members, only Dietrich Eckart was close to Hitler. Acknowledged by Hitler as the spiritual co-founder of the Nazi Party, the guiding light in the early NSDAP movement, it was Eckart that introduced Hitler to Berchtesgaden and the Obersalzberg, where Hitler would write some of Mein Kampf and later own a grand house, the Berghof. It was Eckart that began the cult of personality that surrounded Hitler, and the bond between the two men was strong. Eckart guided Hitler's reading, what he wore, and mentored him politically and philosophically, and also encouraged his violent anti-Semitism. A participant in the failed 1923 Beerhall Putsch, Eckart was imprisoned with Hitler and other Nazis and died of a heart attack in 1926, soon after his release. He is buried in Berchtesgaden. This headstone, created by the Nazis and visited by Hitler, who kept busts of Eckart in his house.